What you're about to see was filmed in front of a live studio audience. What you're about to learn was never supposed to leave the building. Nobody in the CBS legal department knew exactly what Colbert had prepared for that Monday night. They knew what they had told him. They knew the parameters they had set, the language they had sent in writing, the specific instructions communicated through the show's executive producer. The Tallarico interview could not air, and the reason it could not air could not be discussed on broadcast. Two prohibitions: clean, lawyered, final. What they did not account for was the 18-minute block of television that Colbert had been quietly assembling in the hours before the taping. The documents he had pulled, the calls he had made, the geometry of it, as he would later describe it, that he had been tracing on a legal pad at his kitchen table since 4 in the morning. The prohibition arrived at 2:17 p.m. By 4 a.m., he had already been awake for 2 hours with a pen in his hand. February 16, 2026. The Late Show is in its final months. The cancellation announcement, which came 3 days after Colbert called Paramount's $16 million settlement with the president a big, fat bribe, has been in the public record since July. The FCC, under Chairman Brendan Carr, appointed by the current administration, has been quietly reinterpreting broadcast regulations in ways that hadn't been tested in decades. And a Texas state representative named James Tallarico, a Democratic Senate candidate in a race the administration is watching closely, has just taped a 12-minute interview in Studio 6A that CBS's lawyers are now telling the show it cannot broadcast. Back in the present, 11:36 p.m., the taping begins. Colbert walks to his desk without the usual entrance energy, not slower, different. A camera operator who has worked the show for 4 years later said it was the first time in 4 years she felt the need to tighten her frame before he sat down. Something in the set of his shoulders told her to stay close. He sits. He looks at the desk for a moment. Then he looks up. The network says, "I can't give you a URL." He begins. The network says, "I can't give you a QR code." The network says, and he lets a pause exist long enough for the audience to understand that what comes next is not a punchline. I can't mention the name of the person I interviewed. I'm not even sure I can say the words James Tallarico. A ripple moves through the audience, not laughter, something adjacent to it that is actually closer to disbelief wearing laughter's clothes. But here's what I can do, he says. I can tell you that our YouTube channel exists. I can tell you that if you visit it, you'll find it. And I can tell you exactly why they don't want you to see it. 3 months earlier, November 2025. This is where the other timeline begins. FCC Chairman Carr publishes a public notice suggesting that the equal time rule, dormant for years as applied to entertainment programming, might be reinterpreted to cover late-night talk shows. The notice is written in the hedged language of regulatory suggestion, not mandate. It says the commission is considering whether the entertainment exemption should be revisited. Colbert, preparing his show in the same building where he is now sitting, reads the notice and asks his legal team what it means in practice. His legal team says, it means CBS will decide what it means. That answer, he later tells the audience, was the first item on the legal pad at 4 a.m. Back to the present, 11:41 p.m. Here is the geometry of this, Colbert says. He picks up the legal pad. Not a prop. Visibly used, the pages bent at the corners, ink dense and layered in the way ink looks when someone has been working on something for hours. FCC chairman signals a rule change in November. CBS's parent company, Paramount, is in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar merger that needs the administration's approval to proceed. I call the settlement a bribe in July. The show gets canceled 3 days later. The FCC formalizes the rule change in January, and my network enforces the rule change. He sets the pad down before the rule change is even final. He lets the geometry sit, does not embellish it, does not need to. He hasn't eliminated the exemption yet, Colbert says, his voice dropping one register lower so the room leans forward to hear it. But my network is enforcing it as if he had. A woman in the third row covers her mouth with both hands. A man behind her stops writing in the notebook he brought. The band behind Colbert has not moved in 4 minutes. A production assistant in the wings, the same one who queued up the Tallarico segment earlier and then had to uncue it, stands with her lanyard gripped in one fist, not swinging it, just holding it still. Then a door near the stage right curtain opens. A former FCC staff attorney walks out. She spent 8 years at the commission. She did not work under the Carr administration. administration. She reviewed the November notice when it was published and wrote a formal legal analysis, published, publicly available, concluding that applying the equal time rule to late-night talk shows would require the commission to overturn decades of its own precedent with no factual basis in the record. She had been contacted by the show's research team. She agreed to appear because, as she tells the audience plainly, she spent 8 years at a regulatory agency that existed to protect the public interest, and what she is watching happen to that agency requires her to say so in public. The notice Chairman Carr published, she says, standing very still, does not have the force of law. It is a suggestion. It is a signal. It is the commission telling broadcasters, here is the direction the wind is blowing. What CBS did, what this network did in pulling that interview, was not compliance with a rule. It was compliance with a threat. She pauses. Her voice does not waver. I want that distinction to exist on the record, because 6 months from now, when someone claims this was routine regulatory deference, I want there to be a room full of people who heard the word threat used in the same sentence. The room absorbs it. The two timelines merge here, the 4 a.m. legal pad and the February afternoon phone call. And what they produce when laid on top of each other is not an argument. It is a shape, a geometry, as Colbert named it. The FCC signal in November, the rule formalized in January, the merger still in review, the settlement already paid. The interview pulled on the day it was scheduled to air, every line connecting to every other line, and all of them running in the same direction. A second figure steps out. She is a former senior producer at a different CBS program. She left 18 months ago under terms she describes, without elaboration, as non-voluntary. She is here because she was in a meeting, a network-level meeting, not a show-level meeting, where the phrase late-night political temperature was used by a senior executive in the context of the merger review, and she wrote it down in her notebook at the time because she knew, even then, that a phrase like that in a room like that was not a phrase that should stay only in a notebook. Her voice breaks on the third sentence. She stops. Her fingers grip each other until the knuckles go white. She breathes once, deliberately, the way you breathe when you have rehearsed a moment and the moment is harder than the rehearsal. I stayed in that job for 7 more months after that meeting, she says. Every single day, I told myself it wasn't what it sounded like, that it was just corporate language, that it didn't mean what I thought it meant. She looks at the desk, not the audience. And then they pulled the interview, and I knew it meant exactly what I thought it meant. You could feel the shift in the room before anyone moved. It was in the quality of the silence, not the silence of an audience waiting for the next thing, but the silence of people who have just had something confirmed that they already knew but needed to hear, said aloud, by someone who was inside the room when it happened. One person stands, a man, maybe 45, near the center aisle. His hands come together slowly, deliberately, not the reflex clap of a live television audience, but the conscious decision to put his hands together, because the alternative is sitting still while something important happens, and he cannot do that. The person to his right stands, then the row. The applause that builds does not peak and crash the way applause peaks and crashes in a television studio. It holds, it stays at the same sustained level, like a note held past the point where it was expected to resolve, because the room is not finished with what it is feeling. Colbert stands, both hands on the desk. He waits for it to settle. Here is what I want you to know, he says, when the room has come back down. The interview is on YouTube. I cannot link to it. I cannot display a QR code. I cannot say the name. But if you go to our channel, which you know how to find, because you found this show, and you've been finding it for 11 years, it's there. It's always been there. And it's going to stay there, because the network can pull it from the broadcast. Nobody can pull it from the record. He sits back. He closes the legal pad. CBS called this a financial decision. Paramount called it a business necessity. The FCC called it routine regulatory guidance. He looks directly into the lens. I call it what it is, and I've been calling things what they are for 11 years from this desk. That's not changing in the last 3 months. By the time the taping ends, the YouTube upload is already live. No announcement, no social media push. Just a video appearing on the channel with a plain title. The algorithm begins distributing it before most of the audience has left the theater. By midnight, the comment section has reached 10,000 entries. The top comment, which accumulates 47,000 likes by morning, reads, "The not wanting us to watch made me want to watch." By 6 a.m., the Tallarico interview has become the most watched clip on The Late Show's YouTube channel in several months, clearing the December Taylor Swift interview by noon. The clip of Colbert's monologue, the legal pad, the geometry, the precise sequence of dates delivered without editorializing, spread separately, in pieces, each fragment finding its own audience. A teacher in Michigan posts it to her school's parent forum with 3 words as context. Watch this first. A journalist in Brussels cues it twice, stopping at the same frame both times before filing a report about American broadcast regulation. A retired FCC attorney, not the one who appeared on the show, watches it in one sitting and then sends a 3-page letter to the commission's public record. Trump posts at 8:12 a.m. The post is long, the capital letters arrive early and stay. Fake. Witch hunt. Colbert is finished appear in sequence, each denial more emphatic than the last, each one screenshotted and placed beside the specific segment it is denying. The juxtaposition assembles itself without editorial assistance. One side, a man at a desk with a legal pad and a geometry that connects every date to every other date in a single unbroken line. The other side, a post with multiplying exclamation marks and no dates, no documents, no counter-evidence. Just volume. The merger review remains pending. The show counts down its final months. The YouTube channel, which cannot be regulated by the FCC, which does not require a broadcast license, which exists entirely outside the jurisdiction of the threat that started all of this, keeps uploading. And the audience that was told it couldn't see something keeps finding it, because that is what audiences do when the window is closed. They find the door. After everything you just saw, ask yourself one thing. What else has been hiding behind the noise? Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story isn't over. It's just getting started.